Hello, my name is Taylor Wright, and I'm here to talk to you today about discrimination against the deaf. Although I've never experienced this before, so I've done a little research, and I hope you learn a little bit about it too if you have never experienced this topic. Margie L. Baldwin talks on estimates of wage discrimination against workers with sensory disabilities with controls for job demands about the deaf having less wages than someone who doesn't have this disability. Like most jobs, they look to hire someone with experience or effort or willing to work. Other employers also look at someone's communication skills, and someone with a sensory disability may not have the best of communication skills, which makes it harder for them to get hired. Once they are hired, it is very hard for them to keep the job stable. Deaf differs in ways from more types of disabilities, deaf being one of your main senses, causing it to be a really tough disability. So being deaf is very important to being hired for a job. These sensory disabilities require different things to be hired on, which could affect their pays. These can affect their pays because their requirements or accommodations could cost more than what the average person would want to spend. These can affect having a sensory disability is what it is called when you literally have a disability with one of your senses. Stereotypes causes these people with sensory disabilities to not have a very good chance with a job. In Reconsidering Sound in the City, Asserting the Right to the Deaf-Friendly City, Gil Harold talks about cities that are hard to find accessibility for the deaf. The world needs to be focused more on the deaf than just the blind. Do we live in a world where the deaf is looked down upon? Think about that for a second. After reading this article, you may get the idea like I did. People who hear and see seem to be labeled more intelligent, rather than someone that uses sign language on their daily basis. Deaf people could come together to live in this world if they made ways of letting these with disabilities feel more comfortable. Like I said before, have you ever seen a company literally not hire someone just because of their deaf impairment? Well, a company in Phoenix done this according to Gina Shaw in the article she wrote on fighting workplace discrimination. Wrote on fighting discrimination against the hearing impaired. This company in Phoenix fought through a court case with a company called EEOC. Rochelle Dawn was diagnosed with a hearing problem at the age of 12. She applied for a position and was denied because of the accommodations she needed to have this job. She was going to have to go through a 24-hour training, and its company wouldn't pay over $200. So therefore, she couldn't afford it, the company wouldn't pay for it, so she was denied the job. There are just 2 or 3 problems out of hundreds and hundreds. Do you know someone that has a hearing impairment? There are so many employers struggling every day to help these employees reach their great performance level. Like mentioned before about the lawsuit with EEOC, a man named Miles Kimball agreed to pay $95,000 for the relief fund for these accommodations for hearing impairment people. For this employee was Laura Nedgable, who had worked there for this company for 13 years. Imagine how long that would be. Miss Laura was later fired after being assigned a job with computers but no sign language interpreter. Another example of these cases was in 2012 when the EEOC filed a lawsuit against a Wendy's franchise in the state of Texas that refused to hire someone with a hearing problem. Imagine that. The manager made a remark to the person that he did not have a place for someone that could not communicate with the employers and all the other customers very profoundly, like any other worker. So, how sad is that? A professional deaf coach named Mark Clark said most employers do not by no means mean to discriminate, but it is very hard for them to have happy customers with someone that has a small disability. A person with hearing loss could be treated differently just by not participating in a group with coworkers the same way they do. If you're fortunate enough to find a company that has special devices and gadgets that can help someone that is deaf. One of these gadgets, a woman named Miss Clark pointed out, was a device that connected to a hearing aid that you just hooked on your shirt, and it was so small it was hardly ever noticeable. Also, another different device could be hearing aids that they can minimize background noise and increase the speech of their customers or their other employees or their employer. Gerald Barkley points out that every year the students are looking for jobs. Having lower expenses, like the device I mentioned earlier, are good accommodations for businesses. There are so many more cases that a workplace is discriminated in. If a workplace doesn't help the deaf with their accommodations, the business would suffer. These different things could help the deaf communicate tremendously.